Welcome to the DAK Machine Safety podcast. We support the development of a safer, sustainable workplace. In this podcast episode, we will provide the history and background of the B11 series standards. These are voluntary standards. Employers can choose the best standard to assist in their efforts to comply with OSHA. B11.0 was first introduced in 2010. It is the foundation or A-level standard for all B11 standards, and it is aligned and harmonized with ISO 12100. Information for developing alternative methods is found in B11.0, B11.19, and B11.26. Other B11 standards for integrated manufacturing systems and large machines may also be of value.
When did the B11 standards begin?
The B11 standards for machine tools were first approved, beginning with safety requirements for power presses in 1922. Since then, safety requirements for various machine tools have been developed and continually updated and revised to become the series of B11 standards and technical reports. These machine-specific standards are known as C-level standards.
What is the objective of the B11 standards?
The B11 series of standards aims to eliminate injuries to personnel working with or around machinery or machinery systems by establishing requirements for the design, construction, reconstruction, modification, installation, setup, operation, and maintenance of machinery or machine systems. This standard should be used by suppliers and users, as well as by the appropriate authority having jurisdiction. Responsibilities have been assigned to the supplier, for example, the manufacturer, the reconstructor, and the modifier, the user, and the user personnel to implement the standard. This standard is not intended to replace good judgment and personal responsibility. Personnel skill, attitude, training, and experience are safety factors that need to be considered by the user.
Do the standards address the variables between companies and processes?
Yes. The foreword to these standards states, applying risk reduction measures to machinery is complicated by the wide variety of operations and operating conditions, including but not limited to the following: the variations in size, speed, and type of machinery used, the size, thickness, and kind of pieces to be worked, the required accuracy of the finished work, the skill of operators, the length of run, and the method of feeding, including part and scrap removal. Because of these varying factors in the operations and in the workplace, a wide variety of risk reduction measures have been covered in this standard, as well as the machine-specific base type C safety standards.
What are the base type C safety standards?
These standards apply to specific types of metal forming and metal removal machines. Examples include mechanical power presses, hydraulic presses, press brakes, grinding machines, saws, etc.
Will these C-level standards be of value for the development of an alternative method?
Probably not. You'll want to start with B11.0 and then go to B11.19 and B11.26 for the design of control reliable safety systems.
Tell me more about the background of B11.0.
The concepts and principles in this standard can be applied very broadly to various systems and applications. Documented risk assessments were first introduced to the machine tool industry in 2000 with the publication of B11TR3, a technical report on risk assessment and risk reduction. Since that time, the principles of the risk assessment process have been applied to many applications, including traffic control, consumer products, incident investigations, and of course, machinery and equipment.
Does B11.0 link to the national effort on prevention through design?
Yes. Prevention through design, or PTD, is a recent term in industry. The objectives of risk assessment, risk reduction, and elimination of hazards as early as possible are integral and not new to this standard. The phrase prevention through design is used within this standard, as are other equivalent terms such as elimination by design, design out, and substitution to thoroughly address risk assessment and apply it to the life cycle and operations of the machine.
Is B11.0 aligned with ISO standards?
Yes. The standard has been aligned with international, ISO, and European EN standards by the introduction of hazard identification and risk assessment as the principal method for analyzing hazards to personnel to achieve a level of acceptable risk. This standard integrates the requirements of ISO 12100-2010 as well as selected U.S. standards. In 2012, ISO 12100 was adopted as an American national standard and redesignated as ANSI ISO 12100-2012 IDT. For global enterprises, the IDT in the official alphanumeric ANSI designation means identical and unchanged from the ISO version.
How closely aligned is B11.0 to ISO 12100?
ISO 12100 was used as one of the principal resource documents in developing B11.0. However, the technical requirements of ISO 12100 have not been updated since the early 1990s. The content of ISO 12100 Parts 1 and 2 and ISO 14021 were editorially combined without technical changes to create ISO 12100-2010. In addition, ISO 12100 only applies to suppliers of machinery and is unable to include any requirements for users of machinery. ISO 12100 also only applies to new machinery and excludes existing machinery.
If I conform to B11.0, will I conform to ISO 12100?
Yes, B11.0 differs from ISO 12100 in that it specifically includes requirements for both suppliers and end users of machinery. It also includes numerous requirements, informative guidance, and other information related to the safety of machinery, which goes beyond ISO 12100. As a result, conforming with the requirements of ISO 12100 will not assure conformance with the requirements of B11.0. Conversely, conformance with B11.0 will automatically result in conformance with the requirements of ISO 12100.
Does B11.0 link to OSHA?
Yes. Remember that ANSI standards are voluntary and do not have the force of law, but as in the case of alternative methods, they can help an employer achieve OSHA compliance. B11.0 references Federal Occupational Safety and Health Administration OSHA standards. OSHA standards represent the minimum level of regulatory compliance requirements within the United States. Federal OSHA-approved individual state safety and health programs have standards that may exceed these minimum requirements. Accordingly, the appropriate standards need to be used.
Is B11 terminology the same as generally used in the safety profession?
Historically, terms have been used in the B11 community to describe requirements for machinery safety. Experience has shown that certain terms, for example, safeguarding, complementary equipment, are often used imprecisely, even by technical experts. The 2023 revision of B11.0 includes an effort to bring better precision to certain technical terms and has resulted in the deletion of other terms. Although no longer included in B11.0, these terms should still be used in conversations or communications with audiences with a shared understanding of the intended meaning.
Can you provide some specific examples?
Sure. The previous term, safeguarding, is now risk reduction measures engineering controls. Guards and safeguarding devices are now engineering controls. Guards engineering controls devices.
What about safeguarding methods?
They are now part of risk reduction measures.
Why were the changes made?
The 2019 revision of B11.19 was significantly changed to make more inclusive use of the hazard control hierarchy. B11.19 used the more inclusive term risk reduction measures to replace the historical term safeguarding in most instances. Safeguarding includes guards, safeguarding devices, awareness devices, and safeguarding methods. Safeguarding is actually a subset of the more comprehensive term risk reduction measures. Although the term safeguarding has been used in the U.S. for decades, there has been some confusion as to its use and specific technical meaning, particularly considering globalization and with the attendant increasing international commerce and industry. As a result, the 2019 version of B11.19 was harmonized to use the new term risk reduction measures, except in cases where safeguarding is an integral part of a named risk reduction measure, or in cases where replacement may cause additional confusion. One of the strengths of B11 is that an update in one standard carries over to other standards, hence a process of continuous improvement.
Does B11.0 only deal with new equipment?
No, the terms repair, rebuild, refurbish, remanufacture, reconstruct, and others are used to describe work done on existing, legacy equipment. These terms have been defined for use in this standard, and the requirements for the work on existing machinery are described in Clause 4.
If I remember correctly, B11.0 described the term safe in its foreword. Am I correct?
Yes, B11.0 notes that safe is the state of being protected from recognized hazards that are likely to cause physical harm. There is no such thing as being absolutely safe, that is, a complete absence of risk. In turn, no machine is absolutely safe. All machinery contains hazards and some level of residual risk. However, the risk associated with those hazards should be reduced to an acceptable level.
Tell me more about acceptable risk.
The standard guides machinery suppliers and users through a risk assessment process that identifies hazards and reduces corresponding risks to an acceptable level. In this standard, the terms acceptable and tolerable are synonyms. Although engineers have long applied an informal risk assessment framework, this standard includes a formal method to conduct and document the risk assessment process. This standard identifies some preparations that need to be made before a risk assessment begins and presents the basic risk assessment process in a step-by-step approach to achieve this goal.
What results can I expect from the risk assessment?
The outcome of completing the risk assessment process should be a clear understanding of risks, including the potential severity of harm and the probability of the occurrence of harm. Risk reduction measures appropriate to the circumstances. Machinery with risks reduced to an acceptable level. Documentation of the risk assessment.
Does B11.0 reflect best practices?
Indeed, it does. The foreword states, this standard reflects the best industry practice at the time of its approval. The inclusion or omission of language relative to any evolving technology, either in the normative or informative areas of this standard, in no way infers acceptance or rejection of such technologies. The presentation style used in this standard mixes both informative and explanatory text with normative requirements and was chosen to enhance the readability of the information. The normative text requirements appears aligned to the left margin. To meet the requirements of this standard, machinery suppliers and users need to conform to these normative requirements. These requirements typically use the verb shall. Thanks for tuning in to this episode by DAK Machine Safety. Today we discuss the history and background of the B11 series standards. In the following podcast, we'll go into detail to better understand the concept and methodology of task-based risk assessment, which is often referred to by its acronym TABRA. You can support us by clicking like and subscribing. Take care, everyone, and until next time.